It's just taking 1 minute for us to get our opening bumper here. It's very strange. Hey, everybody, it's good to see you. As always, we've got a wonderful group of guests and a wonderful topic. We're going to go live on Facebook and get this show on the road. And for some reason, and this has never happened before, my own video is just not opening up. So it's a funny thing.
Well, we'll just make do.
Well,
By the way,
you know what?
someone's
We're going to
someone
start the show without the opening tonight.
Scott, someone's email is on the upper right thing, and it's being heard every time, like the ding every time an email comes on. There's someone's email, and it's not mine. So,
Okay.
um,
All right. So I'm going to start recording right now, and we're going to start the show in a slightly different way today. Welcome, everybody. I am Love Coach Scott Katamas, and you are watching The Awakening World. And we've got a really important theme and topic. We're going to be learning all about grief intelligence and the power of mourning. We've got some beautiful, beautiful guests with us. And I want to start by welcoming those of our favorite friends. And as always, let us know where you are. I see we've got people from San Diego, Ecuador, California, British Columbia, and it's pretty amazing. Thank you, everybody. I also really want to thank John and Summer Raymer. They are the people who get us out to 100 different Facebook groups and pages. And if you're watching on Facebook, welcome. And I'd like to invite you to join the Global Peace Tribe. And it's really easy to do that. Just go to globalpeacetribe.com, globalpeacetribe.com, and you click the little registration button there, and that will take you to a registration page. You know, we do 3 shows every weekend: Friday night, Saturday night, and Sunday morning. Here's the show we're doing tonight, of course. And tomorrow we have a Sacred Sunday show. So join the Global Peace Tribe. We do retreats now. We have special events. And it's an incredible group of like-minded souls, and we'd love for you to join us. So tonight's theme, the art of grief, really learning about grief intelligence. And our dear friend Gary Malkin is who has helped put this show together. And he invited best-selling author Ken Druck, who's with us, an extraordinary poet, Kim Rosen, who's with us, Michael Tamura, one of our favorites, who's been on the show before, who's had 7 near-death experiences, and our musical artist. We are so delighted to welcome back Elijah Ray, coming to us all the way from Costa Rica. That is very, very exciting. And to tell you, and our beloved brother Omashar is here, as always. And I want to turn it over to the person who really helped put this show together and came up with the theme for tonight. This is my friend Gary Malcolm.
Hey, Scott, thank you so much. I've been so looking forward to this. So we got a beautiful, beautiful evening planned, and I just, you know, I've been wanting to do this for a long time with you, Scott. And one of the things that is really still not understood is how awakening to joy and gratitude grief literacy can be. And we're going to talk. I mean, the man that I know who literally is the master of this subject, I thought, could I get Ken? Could I get Dr. Ken? And sure enough, he said yes. And I'm just so grateful. And we'll have a wonderful opportunity to talk for a good chunk of time. And you'll find out more about Ken's journey. And also Kim being the collaborator and also one of the leading spoken word performance artists on the planet. I call her the ninth wonder of the world because she's the kind of person. Well, we'll talk all about. I'll tell you more about Kim when we have a chance. And then I thought, Elijah, if I am going through my transition, and that means any transition, like into death, into life, into birth, into awakening, into the deepest part of me, dying into the being without the, letting go of the ego. I choose Elijah Ray's music to dive into. I love this man's, the portal that he utilizes, just unbeatable. I'm so grateful you're here, Elijah. Thank you. Yeah. And then Scott, just we're glowing about our guests. So you can talk about just Omashar. I know we've talked about him, but I just want to gush on them a bit.
Yeah, well, Michael Tamura is just, as we're about to see, an incredibly bright light. And he, again, talks about this subject with so much love and personal insight. And I also want to acknowledge that his beautiful wife is watching, Rafaela. And I know that they do a beautiful podcast together. So thank you for being with us. Thank you for letting your beloved husband be with us tonight. Thank you for that. And of course, Omashar is my co pilot. So grateful for how he just supports the show and how every song he writes and creates is so ideal, so perfect. So
So,
it's going to be a wonderful show.
I
And
want to just say, I just want to say something though about the subject. There is this time we're in, and every time, like for example, as we're about to listen to Elijah, the opportunity for us to let listening itself be an opportunity to drop into and die into the present moment. And so I really want to encourage us to listen to the music with an awareness that we're not being entertained, we're being entertained. Where our inner sympathetic strings, body, mind, heart, and soul, are being vibrated to being integrated into the field of the community that we're all creating tonight together. So, as Elijah Ray consecrates our time together, this is really about like the musical lighting of the candle, the burning of the sage. Elijah Ray is going to consecrate our space. And this is sacred space. This is sacred time to share together the profound awareness of the fact that we're going to disappear one day, and how can we show up for that with all of our hearts and souls and minds and bodies. So that's the invitation. Why don't we ask Elijah Ray to take the next step? Muted. Can't hear you. Is it me? Oh, there it
Hello,
is.
friends.
There you are. Hey,
Thank you so
Elijah.
much, Gary. Love you so much, brother. Thank you for being such a genuine, heart centered human. I just adore you too. And everybody here and everyone out there who's listening, I just want to take a moment to breathe into our hearts together. There's something very simple and powerful about just taking a few breaths in silence, and then I'll go ahead and drop into some music here. Just while we take these 3 deep breaths, I want to invite everyone who's listening to just fully arrive where you are, right where you are. Welcoming all that is beautiful, all the good feelings, all the warm fuzzies, and all of that is not good, all that doesn't feel good right now, just to allow everything to be right here. I'd like to open with a song that I wrote about grief. And I realized that grief was actually like a lonely lost friend that didn't have anyone to talk to and felt really alone and really far away. And so I wrote a song to that grief, as though it were a loved one or a friend. And it's called More Each Day. you go, look me in the eyes, and I will show you paradise. And if you're leaving tomorrow, let me say that I will love you more each day. And if the sun forgets to shine, I'll shine upon you with this heart of mine. And if the strong winds are blowing all around, yeah, just sing this song, yeah, and find before you go, look me in the eyes, and I will show you paradise. And if you're leaving tomorrow, let me say that I will love you more each day. Yeah, don't you worry, babe, about your pride. I'll walk beside you whenever you ask. And yes, I know we must go our separate ways, but I'm still gonna love you, oh, more each day. If I could sing it for you a million ways, I'm gonna love you more each day, oh, more each day, oh Lord, more each day.
Yum, 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 yum.
Love you,
yum.
family.
Oh, wow. See what I mean, you guys? Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Elijah. And just before you go, are you being nomad, or are you just in Costa Rica for what are you in Costa Rica for right now?
Yeah, thanks for asking. You know, I live between Hawaii and Costa Rica and Ibiza, Spain, and so I'm planning some deeper roots here in Costa Rica at the moment. I just set up a studio and finishing a new body of work that I'm really excited to share with all of you coming soon. And so I'm here for the foreseeable future. I'll be in Peru for December, leading a group, and then back here to Costa and playing in Vision Festival in the spring. If anyone's coming down here for that, I'll see you there. And yeah, so until further notice, I will be here. Or you might see me in Kauai coming up soon too.
Yeah. So check the chats, and we'll throw in some things later on for sure about how you can hook up with Elijah. But
Absolutely, yeah.
I'm
I mean, the easiest way is to get me on Instagram at Elijah Ray Music or
beautiful.
ElijahRayMusic.com. Yeah.
Yeah. There isn't a time when I have heard you that I haven't swooned.
Mm. Oh, bless your heart, brother.
Just love your music, man. So,
Thank you.
all right. Well, always a tough act to follow, Elijah, but I'm going to offer something musical now and meet my brother in that space.
Thank goodness.
Are we? I think you're complete for this phase, right, Elijah?
I'm complete for this
Yeah,
phase.
great. Okay. Meaning
But he'll
this,
be
this
back.
they'll be
Okay,
Elijah
back.
I'll
will
be
be
back.
back in
You'll
a
be
little
back.
bit.
Great.
I have one
Beautiful.
more. Okay, great.
Yeah,
Great.
you do.
We'll see you
Definitely.
soon. Thank
All
you.
right. Good. So, I have a true confession here. I have always secretly thought that if I didn't sing something, that the music alone wouldn't speak enough. I always thought that bigger was better and more dramatic and vocal and more larger than life had to be, that it wasn't valid without that. And what I'm knowing now is in my efforts to deepen my capacity for being the beer rather than the doer, which is a lot involved with grief literacy. Learning how to cultivate the arts of grief literacy involves a deeper commitment to presence and to listening and to compassion for self and other. And what I've realized is that my musical gift has been always, there's like 3 feet from gold. I'm always just this sitting on top of an opportunity to deepen my relationship to those things. So, we wounded healers, we offer what we need most, right? So I am going to play a piece without singing in honor of the fact that there's thousands of times that I performed where it had to be a song, but I don't, until this, I'm working on a musical right now, and that's the first time I've actually offered songs to the world in my profession. So this music, this beautiful experience of music alone, I want to reframe it as an opportunity, like I said earlier, to listen, not just with our ears and our minds, but with our hearts and souls. And in particular, I'm going to invite you. This piece came out of a cue that I wrote for the sequel to Thrive, the Thrive documentaries. And you must experience it if you haven't, thriveon.com. Foster and Kimberly Gamble's two documentaries that are extraordinary. And this one, the second one, is about our relationship to the unified field. And at one point in the movie, they did a list of all the people that were inventors of free energy and from Tesla on out that were suppressed or exiled or killed. And it was called Elegy for the Things We've Lost. And I turned it into a longer piece. And I found that when I play this piece, it helps me deepen my capacity to face loss as a portal to what I now understand as dark gratitude. It's kind of like I love this phrase, dark gratitude. I heard it this morning in dance. And so, dark gratitude to me means the courage to face what is with clear eyes, open heart, feet on the ground courage for the things we've lost. And there's something about music only rather than vocal music, which is gorgeous and I love singing. But there's something about instrumental music that brings me even deeper into the facing of the dark gratitude for the things we've lost. So it's a short piece, it's on piano, and I hope you use it as a meditation to strengthen your capacity to be with and face and listen to the power of the elegy for the things we've lost. And I know that you're going to have more opportunities to do this with the masterpiece that Kim Rosen is going to be sharing later. So this is my introduction to listening in honor of dark gratitude. Elegy for the things we've lost. Don't forget to breathe while you're facing the things we've lost.
Gary, you're muted.
Oh, does it cover up my music? Oh my God, I didn't realize that. Okay, here we go. Thank you. Mm, sorry. There it is. I'm gonna do that again. Sorry. Mm.
That was absolutely exquisite, Gary. Thank you.
Yeah, that piece, it came through so quickly, and it just quiets me. It just quiets me with a gratitude for, rather than the glass half full or half empty, it fills me with a gratitude for the glass itself. So I hope it had that experience. You had that experience as well. And now, what a perfect time to introduce. I, I almost get a little teary when I want to introduce Kim, because she can't believe how my authentic feelings about you are so. What's the matter? Why are you shaking your head? You're muted, dear.
I thought Ken was coming up next.
Oh, is it true? Oh, yes. Oh, no, no. Oh, yes, Ken. Sorry. Oh, my God. Thank you. I did that thing I do again. Bravo. You caught me. Okay. Thank you. All right. Ken, thank you. I'm sorry. I'm looking and I saw the list and I went, okay. Hi, Ken.
Hi.
I'm a little embarrassed about that, but here we are. So let me shift gears. So I would like to introduce everybody to Ken. And actually, because of the formidable journey that you've been on, Ken, I know that it's a lot to sit through, but I have to read your bio. I have to, because it's so freaking beautiful. So, Dr. Ken Druck is a best selling author, executive coach, and consultant, and internationally known thought leader who has helped countless individuals, families, organizations, and communities turning their greatest losses and challenges into opportunities for healing and becoming the better versions of themselves. So check this out. Recipient of the prestigious Distinguished Contribution to Psychology Award, Ken has inspired and guided clients, readers, audiences, and general public with his pioneering work in healing after loss, family psychology, civility, and aging over the past 45 years. Listen to this. His groundbreaking books, The Real Rules of Life, Healing Your Life After the Loss of a Loved One, The Secrets Men Keep, Courageous Aging, Raising an Aging Parent, and How We Go On, have helped shape our worldviews on adversity and opened our hearts. Ken founded the Jenna Druck Center in 1996 to honor his daughter Jenna after her tragic death. The center's award-winning helping families, and young women's leadership programs provided free grief support to those who lost loved ones at 9/11, Sandy Hook, and Columbine, to mention a few, and trained over 18,000 girls to become leaders in their own lives and their communities. You understand why I want to read this. This is a life. Blows my mind. Ken speaks, conducts grief literacy trainings, classes, podcasts, and programs for audiences worldwide, including the United Nations, Harvard School of Public Health, Young Presidents Organization, and University of California, San Diego Medical School. His work is featured regularly on CNN, in PBS specials, top newspapers, and social media sites. Ken lives in Del Mar, California, where he maintains a coaching practice and a consulting practice as a community leader. So I had to, because Ken is also much more than even just the bio to me. He happens to be the younger brother of my older brother's girlfriend that I grew up with in Rockville Center. So we actually are coming from the same town. And one day, through a mutual friend, when Ken heard Graceful Passages, he said, "Gary Malkin, is that like Stephen Malkin's brother from Rockville Center?" And this began our reconnection as passionate friends and brothers in a field that has deep complementarity and resonance. So you understand, I had to make you sit through that, Ken, because I really wanted people to understand the coup that it represents to have you here with us tonight. Welcome.
Thank you, Gary. Good to be with you. And good to be completing that cycle and that circle. It's amazing that right in the aftermath of 9/11, as I was walking down into the pit where all the firefighters' fathers were searching for bits and pieces and signs of life and helping the families and kind of coordinating a lot of the grief response to 9/11, that you and I reconnected. That, knowing what your gift in the world, what you had already done, and listening to you tell me, Ken, what you've recorded is so intense, it needs music to soften and lubricate and to open people's hearts, because this is what's happened here is so unspeakably sad and horrific. And so there we were sitting in a studio and not having seen each other for 40 years since we were little kids, and creating together my words, my stories, you picking up with every note, the music, and creating, since here's a visual, creating Healing Your Life After the Loss of a Loved One.
Yeah.
And so it's a joy to be with you many years later as our work has deepened and broadened. And it's so good to be with. And I'm so grateful to you and Scott and everybody for sharing this room and this sacred space
Already, right?
with people from all over the world.
We shook
And
this.
I'm so excited
Gotta
to,
be able to get this one off.
We need everybody to mute. Thank you. Good.
Yeah.
Continue, Ken. Sorry.
no, we're all here. So if anybody's got anything to say, I welcome it. But
Well,
I'm grateful for the opportunity to meet people from all over, people who are part of the Global Peace Tribe. I can't imagine a more heartful space to be in tonight. So I'm delighted to be with you. And I hope to hear from people as well. I'm as interested in what you have to say as even more interested than what I have to say. And I welcome your questions or your added wisdom and sensitivities to this conversation.
Well, Ken, I might even be able to find one of the tracks. We might want to play a little sample of it at some point. When you're speaking about something, maybe I'll go rummaging in my archive. I think I have a track that I could play, but everybody wants to know about the creation story. It's like, to whatever degree can you share? I remember when I met you, it wasn't that long after the loss of Jenna, and everything was raw. And I remember what a courageous stand you were for not wanting to gloss anything over, and for you to sit in the white hot heat of the experience of grief without any platitudes and, oh, you're going to she's a better place. And I remember what a fierce defender you were of people's right to grieve as long and deep as they need to. And I'd love people to know a little bit of how you entered into this understanding that really was prescient for our time because of the amount of grief that everyone needs to have literacy around in order to just exist on this planet today. So take it.
Maya Angelou, one of my heroes, said that courage is the greatest virtue. It's embedded in every one of the other virtues. And the courage to me means facing in. And when you're grieving, whether you've suffered a life loss, and in my case, the death of my daughter, my beautiful 21-year-old daughter, who was in India on a study abroad program, on her way to the Taj Mahal, when the bus she was on flipped over off the Grand Trunk Road. But whether you're grieving a life loss of somebody, a loved one, or a living loss, where you are grieving the loss of your health, your future as you knew it, your marriage, a job, a career, a path that you loved, a friendship that ended in a betrayal or transgression, whatever kind of loss you might be experiencing, that it takes tremendous courage just to show up. Even I could even say the people who've tuned in today are doing so courageously to face into, because there's no way around or under, or I'm getting over it, or there's only through it. There's only summoning, as we all have done so many times in our lives, summoning newfound courage, understanding, kindness, patience, because at the center of all grief and healing after loss has to be self-compassion. The last couple of years, I've adopted a slogan: take your foot off of your throat and put your hand on your heart. We are all so harshly self-critical, judgmental, putting ourselves in a box, so condemning. It's almost like we're in a courtroom with only a prosecuting attorney with that admonishing finger in our face, producing evidence. prosecuting us, convicting us. There's no defense attorney to say, Your Honor, that's ridiculous, I object, or a judge to say, you're going to get thrown out of court. You're in contempt of court. Or a jury to say, my God, there's no guilt here. So moving our foot from our throat with all the things that we say to ourselves after suffering a loss, moving it down to our heart and showing ourselves every kindness, every measure of patience and understanding and support, encouragement and faith is a divine gesture, is the secret sauce to how we go on. And for me, Gary, when you talk about, what I did, I was in inescapable, choiceless moments of sorrow. That sorrow needed a voice. My objection, what do people go through when they've suffered a traumatic loss? It's like, what? Get the casting director on the phone. Who the hell, how does all this work? How could something like this happen? How could my beautiful 21-year-old daughter die at age 21 in an accident? How could my husband leave me for somebody else, or my wife, take off or shut down emotionally? How could these things happen? How could I go in for my physical and 3 weeks later I'm in surgery fighting for my life? This is the nature of life, that some of these things happen. And so how we deal with it, how we go on. I love, what you guys were all saying before. Ironically, the best way that we go on is not to go on, is to stay in the moment, to allow ourselves the honest experience of what we're going through. There are, I talk about the pillars of courageous living, and one of them is just to be so kindly and brutally honest with ourselves about what we're going through. When we suffer a loss like I've suffered, we've not only suffered the loss of somebody we love, we've also lost the world because we don't know how to fit into it anymore. We fear that we're going to lose the world. We can't go through the la-di-da and the blah blah and the, we're broken, truly brokenhearted. And we don't understand yet that it's a heart broken open that expands us, that allows us to truly breathe in the way that's been suggested. That allowing and permitting and creating the safety and permission to feel what we're feeling, to go through what we're going through, and to give ourselves that safety, that kindness, that permission, that freedom to say, out of anger, I want to spit in the face of the universe right now. This isn't fair. I don't deserve this. My daughter didn't deserve this. How does this all work? I've lost my faith and my beliefs in how this all works. If something like this could happen to somebody so beautiful and somebody so good, who get the casting director on the phone. Where do I file my complaints? Get customer service on the phone, because this sucks. And I hate that this is the history of my life, that this is the way it has evolved. And I think it was, for me, Gary, whether it's, saying, my God, closure is the most destructive myth that people can perpetuate. Oh, go get some closure. That people get shut down. The messaging, the subtle messaging to people, like, you're making us all feel very uncomfortable. Your grief is so messy and incomplete. You just need to think more positively or see the bigger picture. Like, I can tell you, she's in a better place. No, she's not in a better place. Her place is here with me. Her place is finishing her life, living out this beautiful blossoming of a human being that I've watched, that I've tendered since she was a little tiny baby that looked like an ET. So the honesty, is so essential, Gary. And, I remember one specific incident where a dad came to me when I started the Gender Drug Center. He said, look, I'm not coming into your offices. I don't want counseling. I didn't sign up to this BS about grief and grieving. He says, I just want one question answered. People said I should go talk to you. Well, here I am. I have one question. He says, I'm screwed, aren't I? What was he talking about? His daughter had been raped and murdered, getting her best friend out of a domestic violence situation, helping her move out of her apartment to a guy who was brutal and violent. And that night he killed this man's daughter in vengeance. And he said, just answer that question. I'm screwed. And he didn't use the word screwed, by the way. And I looked at him and I said, you are screwed. And for the first time since his daughter had been murdered, this man cracked open with tears. And I held him. And it was the first time he had given himself that he felt safe enough to let it all go. And then I said, before we finished meeting, I said, I want to be honest with you. I've only given you half the truth. He says, what are you talking about? I said, if I told you the other half, you'd have every reason to choke me and throw me to the ground. So let's talk in about a year. He says, I'm not waiting a year. I didn't want to see you again. He says, what the hell's the rest of the truth? And I said, you're not screwed. Paradoxically, you're screwed and you're not screwed. You're going to get to live out the rest of your days, however many they are, by honoring your daughter, your angel daughter who has passed, and your earth daughter who's living just a few miles from here. And that formed into something I call the 7 honorings, which I'm glad to share with you, or people can go to my website and read about. But it's the honesty and the self-compassion, the kindness and the permission to say it how it really is, to feel it how it really is, and to create a safe space and a judgment-free zone with people who are trusted confidants to be able to air it out. And that, for me, is the most essential and central part of healing after loss, out of becoming grief literate. And I trained psychiatrists at University of California, San Diego Medical School, young psychiatrists. They asked me to teach them grief literacy. And it's so important, because how many people are they going to be seeing who've suffered losses?
Right.
And how are they trained to figure things out and fix them? Figure out and fix, rather than be with, stand with, walk with, listen to, quiet your own mind and your own thoughts. You don't have to fix anybody. Listen to them. Help them think about what their options are. Help them think about the people in their lives they should be spending time with, and those tragedy groupies who they shouldn't be spending time with. To think about what high-grade self-care looks like in the aftermath of a traumatic loss. And I'm not talking about a mani and a pedi. I'm talking about deep self-care, permission, stopping admonishing, stopping trips into the torture chamber of guilt where we irrationally implicate ourselves in the death of a loved one. So these are some essential things.
God, it's so beautiful to hear you speak, and I am so grateful. And when you talk about, when you shared with me that kind of a qualitative, I don't know if there was an actual study when you said that 90+% of all aberrations in human behavior can be attributed to unassimilated grief. I think that was your understanding after Columbine or something, where you did.
It was my understanding.
Say a little bit about that.
Yeah, early in my career in psychology, I worked with a lot of kids who were getting into terrible trouble and ended up, hundreds of thousands of them, in youth authority facilities. And the research they did about why do these kids get into trouble? Why are they so indifferent to the pain of other people? And it's traceable to unprocessed grief. All of them had horrible losses that they suffered. And there wasn't one adult present who could say, please tell me about it. Let me place my hand on your heart. Let me just listen. Let me try to understand. Let me help you feel alone. You know, the greatest gift we can give another person is the gift of feeling understood, of being met, of being listened to. Is there any greater way to help somebody feel that they can trust you with you are interested in their well-being, that it's a safe place, it's a refuge. But these kids did not have that refuge. And they hardened. And we talked about the heart broken open. It's a heart broken closed that armors itself, that becomes indifferent to the pain. You know, since nobody gives a damn about my pain, let's spread it around a little bit. And who becomes indifferent or vengeful to the pain of other people and goes out and ends up and does what they do and ends up in the California Youth Authority with a couple of 100,000 other kids who've gone through very similar kinds of losses and who had nobody there to help them begin to learn how to process their losses.
Right.
So unprocessed grief becomes indifference to the pain of other people and eventually violence.
I want to just before Scott has some amazing questions that are coming in by the many on the Facebook Live program. So I'll give Scott a chance to give those questions. But I just wanted to say that piece of allowing ourselves to be with in all the ways that you're talking about is a kind of in a culture that denies aging, loss, death, grief, and all the things that are associated to it. It's just so stunning the way it's been designed to actually the very thing that we avoid, right? So Scott, please share some of the questions that are coming up for Ken.
Well, thank you. First of all, Ken, it's a pleasure to meet you. And Monday will be the anniversary of my wife's death. She died in my arms at age 52.
So sorry, Scott.
Well, you know, a word that has helped me is bittersweet.
Mm-hmm.
It's bitter that she's gone, and it's sweet that I still miss her so much.
Yes.
And a few of the comments and then a couple questions.
Can I say something quickly?
Please.
At 9/11, with all the support groups and all the programs we put together for all the families, we had a bittersweet plant in every one of them. That's the first thing. The second thing I want to say is that there was a beautiful line in Elijah's song, I will love you more each day. And it speaks to the love that never dies. And it's one of the honorings. One of the 7 honorings is to cultivate the spiritual relationship that we have with the people we love who've passed through the love that never dies. I'm not saying that I understand 100% of how it all works. I don't. We're flying through space on a speck, not even a grain of sand. And we just learned from, Neil deGrasse Tyson, we don't live in a universe. We live in universes. There are more than, there are infinite universes. So, how could we know the true 100% nature of life and death? But the love that never dies, the I love you that I give my daughter, Scott, that you give your wife every day, the touch that you feel and you don't know where it came from your wife and my daughter and Gary's sister, Ellen, who's a beautiful soul, by the way. I had to throw in about Ellen.
I'm so grateful you did, Ken.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, but those, and all of us who are listening, think about it. Do you give yourself full permission, even not knowing how it all works and what's true? And, what happens after even if you don't have certainty, 100% certainty, is it okay to bet our faith on what gives us comfort and what feels right, and without having to ever apologize for it or explain it, to just hand on our heart, self-compassion, speaking to ourselves through self-compassion and kindness, saying, you go, boy, I'm so proud of you for allowing yourself to feel that love and to give that love.
Yeah.
And just permission, unconditionally. So thank you for sharing that. What is the question? I'm sorry, I cut you off.
No. Well, first of all, we're on 110 groups and Facebook groups and pages, so I'm going to try and track them as best as we can. Heidi on Facebook pointed out that Brene Brown says the cruelest words in the English language are "get over it."
Right.
And so that was a comment that came in. There's a lot of comments that have come
A
in.
beautiful comment, and it's a beautiful. Brene does some beautiful work, and the cruelty, either the uselessness or the cruelty, it's as often useless as it is mean or cruel or disallowing, because what you're doing is asking somebody to obliterate their truth, obliterate the very things that are calling to us to be spoken, to be vented, to be sung, to be wailed. They're just searching for some kind of an outlet to lock down, and with a heart broken, closed, and to contract around that pain, to become the smaller version of ourselves, the version that has dumbed down, that has numbed out, is such an insult from ourselves to ourselves. And somebody inviting us to do that, who's making their love conditional, their acceptance and approval conditional upon our going into hiding, denying, repressing, avoiding, out numbing, out drinking, out busying, whatever, out eating, whatever it is that is searching for expression in us, so that we can organically find a way to go on.
Right.
Continue to create our life. And one of the other honorings is called writing new chapters of our lives. How do we do that? If we've dumbed ourselves down, if we've disallowed our pain, the flip side of which is our love. How do we do that? We can't possibly write new chapters. It all becomes about the cherished past and the lost future. And when Gary said before, I write books about grieving and aging, it's because I discovered, my God, everything I know about grief is transferable to aging. We grieve the loss of our younger selves. Is that the most difficult part of aging? Is thinking back and grieving the loss of our younger self? Well, look at what you used to be able to do. And what's that wrinkle over there? And isn't your hairline gone up an inch? And, and you're surely a lot slower. And you've got all these aches and pains now. What the hell's that about? So rather than cherishing the version of ourselves that is here, that is present, and learning to love and sing to that part of ourselves and hold it in compassion, we judge it and dismiss it. And is it any wonder that we go kicking and screaming into our elder years so often?
I'm just thinking, Scott, I know you have to ask these questions, but I'm just thinking we need to have Ken back sometime where we can actually go even more deeply into the 7 honorings and the components of grief literacy. And because this is a defining literacy of our time that is obstructing our ability to actually imagine how we as a species can go forward, given what we're mourning around extinction of species.
Ken, I'm hoping you can stay for the roundtable Q&A, because people do want to hear those 7 components. And then the other question, I'll put it out now, but then maybe we can tackle it during our Q&A, because we need to get to Kim.
Yes.
The other question was, when you talk about cracking, our heart broken open, the question was, to what degree is that are you influenced by Rumi, who speaks so much of that in his poetry, the pathway of the broken heart? So we would love to hear a little bit about that from you, about it now or during the Q&A.
Yeah, just briefly, I was told that Rumi did that by one of the world experts on Rumi, who lives right near me in Del Mar, is the wife of a dear friend of mine who's also in one of my men's groups, and she writes books about Rumi. And she said she read one of my books, my Real Rules of Life book, and she said, "Do you know that you are saying exactly?" And she showed me what Rumi said, and I said, "Kindred spirit." Kindred spirit, thank you for letting me know on whose shoulders I stand.
Mm.
And it is, for me, it's a sacred thing to think back to what our ancestors shared. You know, we listen to music. Gary shares music and Elijah shares music. And I started making it a study of the great works of art. Why did Monet create the lily pond? And why is there a bridge over the pond? Because his daughter died. He was trying to find a path through the veil. You know, why did so many of the great composers, and Gary could speak to this, you know, why did Brahms and Mahler, why was Mahler creating music that spoke right to our hearts? Why is Gary compose music that all of us sit in awe? It's like, where did you find that? How does that come through you? It's because they have found a channel of expression for their deepest grief, their greatest love and joy, and it all comes through them, and we get to be in the audience.
You know, Rumi is the best-selling poet in America, a
Yeah.
12th century gay Islamic mystic is the best-selling poet in America. Why? Because same thing, that terrible thing that happened to him in midlife, um, and that incredible grief is where this extraordinary poetry that has lasted centuries, and it's all about the pathway of the broken heart.
Right.
So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ken. And please read all the comments, at least in the Zoom room. And there are that many more
Well,
on Facebook.
and I want to show you just one picture that I think everybody in the audience will enjoy. This sits above my desk.
Oh,
And
Wow.
it speaks to the grief. This is
Wow.
by a European sculpture. I
That's
just thought you'd enjoy
extraordinary.
it. Yeah.
Wow. You know, I know we have to move on, but I just want to say also one more thing, if I may, Scott.
sure.
The institutionalized grief avoidance is something that I'll never forget. You told me this in the first 2 years of our reconnecting. I think you were the one that told me the story that there was a company where there was someone who was really depended upon, that he was the linchpin. He was really important. And someone, either his wife or his daughter or somebody, died. And he was completely dysfunctionally grieving, right? And they brought him back at kind of gunpoint energetically because they couldn't function in the company without him too soon. And I think you told me the story that he killed himself because it was just not, there wasn't space for understanding. So on an institutional level, the amount of lost, I mean, I hate to sound like lost productivity, it sounds so cold, but the misunderstanding of the role of grief in our culture is so embedded. And I just never forgot. Wasn't that you that told me that story, Ken? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And out of that, I created something called the Compassionate Workplace. And I go in, I've done this with, you know, hundreds of organizations, but it is the culture, it's the culture of corporate culture. It's the culture, unfortunately, of many religious organizations.
Right.
You know, you can't hear a peep in the room. You know, God forbid somebody coughs or cries, and then everybody apologizes. When people cry in my office and then apologize, I say your apology isn't
Not
it's you've
accepted.
honored me. You've honored me by sharing something sacred, by sharing your love and your broken heart. So no, there's no apology in this room. Anyhow,
Thank you.
I'm
So,
so excited to hear Kim.
yeah, well, Ken, hope you stick around for the post section so we can ask a few more questions. And you are such a blessing. And that, you know, that famous phrase, there is no perfect offering. That's how the light gets in. You got so much light coming out of every pore of your body. And I just am blessed the day we reconnected. Thank you, my brother. Thank you, my dear friend. I'm so grateful. I can hear you speak for hours. Thank you for this piece. And I really can't wait to hear more. But let's pivot now. And I really embarrassed myself by jumping into this, probably because I'm so thrilled to have both Kim and Ken here. Just want to take a moment and just to feel the cultivated field that Ken has just created for us. And it's perfect that I'm not going now, because I realize in the design, it's perfect that you now give us the opportunity to create another profoundly effective tool for being with holistically the experience of loss. How would you like to work this, Kim? I'd like to just introduce Kim first, and I don't have a bio to read this time. Forgive me for that. Not that you didn't deserve it either, but
Better that way.
this is what I was going to say. I get a little teary when I try to express to you all who Kim is to me. We've had a multidimensional and amazing relationship over the last 10 years. Really, 20 years. And what I want to say is I have a challenged relationship with poetry. And when I read poetry, my ADD brain goes a little bit like it just fries. And then I met Kim. And Kim has done so much deep spiritual work on herself. The pathways, what was that? Used to be a
Pathwork.
Pathwork. So she used to be a very respected teacher in the Pathwork community. Pathwork is a very deep spiritual tradition from the East Coast and around the world. And I'd heard her share her work, which you're about to hear. And what is the phenomenon? That because Kim has done her work and has absorbed this poem in every dimension possible, when she speaks it, there's not an ounce of me that doesn't understand it. But when I try to read it, I couldn't possibly tell you what it is. So I think the best way to start, Kim, is to give people, let's see, I didn't really introduce you. You're going to have to go to Kim at kimrosen.net, or no, it's kimrosen.net. Kim has performed on the Madison Square Garden stage for Eve Ensler's events. Kim has written a book that is the most poetic piece of prose I have ever read, called Saved by a Poem. This book is a masterpiece of understanding the role that poetry plays and has played since the beginning of time for the human species. And it's a really phenomenal book, Saved by a Poem. I can say many more things about you, my dear, but the best way to do it is for you to just invite us into how to listen to what you're about to share with us. And one last thing I want to say. I had the great honor of being at a listening party at Kim's house, where we listened to she and Jamie Sieber's new masterpiece called Feast of Losses. Now, as someone that came out with something 22 years ago designed to create a musical experience to simmer in the grief experience, I had never heard anything created since I tried to do it that did such a phenomenal job at helping people be with the center, and all of the experience of grief. And so I literally said at the end of that listening, what can I do to help people know? And one of the things I'm delighted about is, you'll know more that I recommend people are doing this, creating listening parties for us to listen together to Feast of Losses. And I want to really recommend that you invite like 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 people and listen to this album from beginning to end. It's a masterpiece. And so I will hand the baton, because I want it to be more about you now. So let's go. Tell us more about this work, and you're going to do it. Okay.
Thank you, Gary. To me, Gary is the Sat Guru of the power of spoken word and music. I think one of the superpowers of spoken word and music is to create an alchemy a medicine against which the mind has no hope of maintaining its defenses, and the heart has no hope of keeping its walls up. And so thank you, Ken, and thank you, Scott, and thank you, Elijah. It's been extraordinary to be here, and I want to offer the next 11 minutes or so to everyone who's here to listen, yes, to the poetry and the music, but let it be a listening to yourself as you well up from within. I was thinking as I was listening to Ken that really what a poem does is it speaks the wisdom of grieving from inside you. And so, as if these words were coming from inside you, feel free to close your eyes or even turn away from your screen and let yourself steep in this and see what rises to greet it. The music is by Jamie Sieber, and I will tell you the names of the poems at the end, so no worries about writing anything down. Let yourself lean back and listen to yourself. Wave of sorrow, do not drown me now. I see the island, still ahead somehow. I see the island, and its sands are fair. Wave of sorrow, take me there. I have walked through many lives, some of them my own. And I am not who I was, although some principle of being abides, from which I struggle not to stray. When I look back, as I am compelled to look before I can proceed on my journey, I see the milestones dwindling towards the horizon, and the slow fires from the abandoned campsites over which scavenger angels wheel on heavy wings. Oh, I have made a tribe out of my true affections, and my tribe is scattered. How shall the heart be reconciled to its feast of losses? In a rising wind, the manic dust of my friends, those who fell along the way, bitterly stings my face. Yet I turn, exulting somewhat, with my will intact, to go wherever I need to go, and every stone on the road precious to me. In my darkest night, when the moon was covered and I roamed through wreckage, a nimbus-clouded voice directed me. Live in the layers, not on the litter. Live in the layers, not on the litter. Though I lack the art to decipher it, No doubt the next chapter in my book of transformations is already written. I am not done with my changes. Wave of sorrow, do not drown me now. I see the island still ahead somehow. I see the island and its sands are fair. Wave of sorrow, take me there. How shall the heart be reconciled to its feast of losses? The thing is to love life, even if you have no stomach for it. When everything you've held dear crumbles like burnt paper in your hand, your throat filled with the silt of it. When grief sits with you, its tropical heat thickening the air, heavy as water, more fit for gills than lungs. When grief weights you like your own flesh, only more of it, an obesity of grief. You think, how can a body stand this? Then you take life like a face between your palms, and you say, yes, I will take you. I will love you again. When grief weights you like your own flesh, only more of it, an obesity of grief. You think, how can a body stand this? Then you hold life like a face between your palms, a plain face, no charming smile, no violet eyes, and you say, yes, I will take you. I will love you again. Oh, I have made myself a tribe out of my true affections, and my tribe is scattered. How shall the heart be reconciled to its feast of losses? In a rising wind, the manic dust of my friends, those who fell along the way, bitterly stings my face. Yet I turn, exultant somewhat, with my will intact to go wherever I need to go, and every stone on the road precious to me. In my darkest night, when the moon was covered and I roamed through wreckage. A nimbus-clouded voice directed me. Live in the layers, not on the litter. Though I lack the art to decipher it, no doubt the next chapter in my book of transformations is already written. I am not done with my changes. Wave of sorrow, do not drown me now. I see the island still ahead somehow. I see the island and its sands are fair. Wave of sorrow, take me there. Thank you.
Let's just take a moment in silence together. Let's digest that and breathe into that journey we've just been on. Thank you, Kim.
That was, the poems were a poem which I'll put in the chat after Gary and I are complete here. I'll put all the credits in the chat. But the first poem is Island by Langston Hughes. Second poem is The Layers by Stanley Kunitz. And interwoven with The Layers was a poem called The Thing Is by Ellen Bass. So I'm just going to change my microphone here so we can talk a little.
Having only a few moments to ask you a few questions is like looking at a feast and only being able to have an appetizer or a taste of it. Because I literally could spend an hour, and that's why I'm going to create a podcast called Islands of Inner Peace to have you as a guest for that someday, and I'm sure we'll have you on again. Why don't you share a little bit about, the two things that I'm thinking about is your understanding of the experience of poetry as it's experienced with music, and just what, because this is your career, you've been doing this for so many years. Just say a little bit about what you know about or suspect about how we listen to these sentiments and depths of words with music when it comes to the way you deliver it.
Well, I tried to put into words, as I have and you have more eloquently than actually anyone I know, how the heart and the mind really have no defense against certain collaborations of poetry and music. So what might be a teaching becomes an infusion, or I guess the word could also be maybe a transmission, but really an infusion, and as in welling up from inside. And how does that happen? I actually could say a little bit about the biochemistry of how that happens, with the entrainment in the rhythms of the poetry and the music is really no different than the entrainments to a shaman's drum, where the pulsations of the body, the multiple pulsations of the body start getting entrained into a rhythm, and it actually creates biochemical shifts which change the pulsations of the cerebrospinal fluid, which change the pulsations of the fluids in the sac around the brain, which change the brain waves, which allows a kind of opening, a kind of unlocking of the brain so that another kind of knowing and experience can arise. And so I always say that poetry uses the mind to unlock the mind. Poetry uses the mind to unlock the mind, to go beyond the mind so that whatever the deeper wisdom, and the wisdom may come in tears, the wisdom may come in yowls, the wisdom may come in roars, it may come in dance, and it may come in insight, but it doesn't come from anything that's been thought before. It comes fresh in this moment because of the shifts that happen. And, struck by so much of what you said, but one thing you said that was simple was that, and then he started weeping and I held him. And poetry and music literally holds us. And as human beings, for whatever reason, we fare better with a container that we can melt in. The old caterpillar metaphor, like if that caterpillar didn't have the cocoon, it would be a mess. But poetry and music, like even 12 minutes of poetry and music with a beginning, middle, and end, lets our energetics, and especially our hypervigilant ego, know that something else is holding us together so we can let go and melt.
It's so beautiful, Kim. And this is the thing. We have like I said, we could talk more about this. And we either choose to talk more about it or give you the chance to do one more poem. And although it's a little bit longer than we probably need to shift in about 5 minutes, but 7 minutes, I would rather just give you another chance to do one more poem, because just that way we get to really be held by your beautiful work. And I oh, there's an echo. So I do suggest that you get Feast of Losses, and you'll find out more about how to do that later when we do all the promo stuff. But Kim, are you open to doing one more?
I would love to do one more, and I will say this is a poem on the album. They're all my favorite poem, but I've never done this one live before, so it will be an adventure. It's a poem that I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, know deeply, and it's my hope and prayer that it arises.
What I want to say is just one thing. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Somebody said in the chat, you're the most beautiful reader of poetry. I really want to make people understand. Kim is not reading anything. She's memorized everything so that we could get it digested in a way, body, mind, heart, and soul. So just remember that this is an art form that is about coming from you, not reading. Okay? Sorry to interrupt. Go ahead, Kim.
Thank you for clarifying that. I actually don't like the word memorize. I like the word learned by heart, which I could go on and on about, but I won't, because I want Mary Oliver to speak to you with Jamie Sieber's music and an incredible posse of musicians, which you will hear on this piece. So once again, I invite you to perhaps take a couple deep breaths, and if you'd like to, feel free to close your eyes and turn away from your screen if you like, and listen to yourself in the steeping of this music and poetry. when death comes, like the hungry bear in autumn. When death comes and takes all the bright coins out of his purse to buy me and snaps the purse shut. When death comes like the measles pox. When death comes like an iceberg between the shoulder blades. I want to step through that door full of curiosity, wondering, what is it going to be like, that cottage of darkness? And so I look upon everything as a brotherhood and a sisterhood. And I think of time as no more than an idea. And I consider eternity as another possibility. And I think of each life like a flower, as common as a field daisy, and as singular. And each name a comfortable music on the tongue, ending as all music does, towards silence. And each body a lion of courage, and something precious to the earth. When it's over, I want to say, all my life I was a bride, married to amazement. I was the bridegroom taking the world into my arms. When it's over, I don't want to find myself sighing and fearful or full of argument. I don't want to wonder if I have made of my life something particular and real. I don't want to end up simply having visited this earth. When it's over, I want to say all my life I was a bride, married to amazement. I was the bridegroom taking the world into my arms. When death comes, like the hungry bear in autumn. When death comes and takes all the bright coins out of its purse to buy me and snaps the purse shut. When death comes like the measles pox. When death comes like an iceberg between the shoulder blades. I want to step through that door full of curiosity, wondering, what is it going to be like, that cottage of darkness? And so I look upon everything as a brotherhood and a sisterhood. And I think of time as no more than an idea, and I consider eternity as another possibility, and I think of each life like a flower, as common as a field daisy, and as singular. And each body a lion of courage, and something precious to the earth. When it's over, I want to say, all my life I was a bride, married to amazement. I was the bridegroom, taking the world into my arms. When it's over, I don't want to wonder if I have made of my life something particular and real. I don't want to end up simply having visited this world. When Death Comes by Mary Oliver, music by Jamie Sieber, and a slew of other musicians I will put in the chat.
I want to invite everyone to put their hands up in gratitude for this extraordinary artist, this this woman that embodies and absorbs and assimilates for us these poems and delivers them in a way that we can understand and use practically for awakening our lives. Kim, I love you so much. I'm so grateful you said yes at such short notice. And there's so much more. Can we show the screen of this gorgeous, gorgeous masterpiece, Feast of Losses? I just get the chills just thinking about what you'll experience. And again, if you allow yourself to listen to this, we don't listen anymore in this culture without looking at something. It's another loss, you know. And right now, I want to invite you to imagine, what if listening itself was a transformative tool to becoming the best version of who you are? Because I know that it's true. And this work, especially at this time, it's medicine for our times in a way that will allow you to be a bride to amazement, as Mary Oliver says. Because it gives forth, it gives birth to a radical form of gratitude for everything that is. And Jamie Sieber, hopefully we'll have you both on to Awakening World someday if I'm lucky enough to co-host this again. Scott, I'd love to have both of them on with them performing. Would be amazing. And we think I'll pass the baton, but with just enormous gratitude. I hope you can stay on to the questions and answers at the end. But if either way, deep gratitude to you, Kim. Thank you, honey.
Mm. Thank you, Gary. There's no one I'd rather converse with energetically and in music and poetry and in conversation about the power of opening the heart and melting the mind.
Mwah. Thank you.
Kim, thank you so much. What a joy to meet you, and our audience is just lighting up the chat box with their appreciations. And yeah, I mean, you really, both poems, just both of those sequences took us on quite a journey. And one of the things I do when there's something that special, I actually am going to edit your sequence and put it in our playlist at the top of our YouTube channel. It's dynamic segments, and I'm going to create a special edit because both of your poems and your transmission is just so powerful. So it's a thank you, Gary, for bringing this incredible artist and this incredible radiant being into our awakening world. Thank you. Yeah.
And later, by the way, I hope we'll have a chance to talk about the nonprofit that I honestly call it one of the most inspiring nonprofits I've ever known about. And it's actually an extraordinary thing to know about. So please don't leave until you hear about the nonprofit. She's about to go to Africa in a few days for 2 months to be with these women that have been the recipients of the nonprofit that we'll talk about later.
Okay, we'll talk about that during the Q&A.
Yeah, good.
This is one of those wonderful shows, and of course we're running late, but bear with us, everybody. We still have Michael Tamura and Elijah Ray, and you know, I have the honor of working with so many amazing musical artists. I'm staying right now on Louisa Stowe's property. I'm close to Kristen Hoffman. I work with people like Lloyd Bard, and they all, my dear friend Maria Stark, and they all look up to Elijah Ray. They all, like, when I say, who do you listen to, or who are the artists that you especially want to see at the festival or work with? It's always Elijah Ray. He is the artist's artist. And so it's really wonderful to have you back on the show again, brother. Um, and and I hope you're enjoying this evening. It's been, we just heard from Kim, who did Feast of Losses. This has been a feast of just heart opening words and presentation, and now your music. So thank you, sir.
Oh, thank you so much. It's been such a heartfelt evening, and I just feel honored to be sitting amongst you all, just such exquisite, noble souls. And there's. I was talking to a friend this morning about music and the arts and the music industry, and there's there's a difference between performing and what I call prayer forming, and being a channel or an instrument for prayers to form through us. And I just feel every single one of you here is such a prayer formance artists of the highest order. So it's an honor to be in your presence. And thank you, Scott, for those kind words. I'm reminded of one of my earliest memories in music. I was in, I think, first year of high school, and I think a friend of mine and I took a car and drove across the country to a jazz festival, and I got to meet a few of my idols at that time as a young budding jazz musician. And I met Elvin Jones and Clark Terry, who played with Duke Ellington Orchestra, and all these elders to me that I looked up to. And I remember meeting Lionel Hampton. I think he was 90 years old at the time. And I remember just meeting Lionel, and I went up to him. I'm 16 years old, ran up to Lionel and I said, "Mr. Hampton, wow, you were so amazing tonight. You still got it, man." And I gave him a good compliment. And I remember his reaction stayed with me for the rest of my life. He laughed so hard, slapped his knees like, "I'm learning." And I thought, wow, 90 years old, legend, and he tells me as a young 16-year-old musician he's still learning. So I thought I'm going to be that for the rest of my life. I'm going to be learning. So that's what I have to say to you, Scott.
I've got to come in for a second. Akira Kurosawa is generally considered Japan's greatest filmmaker. And several years ago, he received an honorary Oscar. And Steven Spielberg and George Lucas gave it to him. They talked about how he was the inspiration for their movies. He was 85 years old when this happened, and his exact words were, "Thank you. After 50 years of making movies, I'm beginning to learn how to do it."
Right,
So,
right.
very similar, one of the great filmmakers. And there it is. It's like we're always learning, we're always growing, we're always evolving. So, thank you for sharing that beautiful story about Lionel Hampton.
Yeah, well, thanks for allowing me to just learn and remember with you all. I'd like to just learn a little bit about this piano that's sitting in front of me. So I just was so inspired by my friend Gary Malkin and Omashar tonight, and just the beautiful pianos that are out. I had to actually go drag mine in here for the second song. So I'm going to just see what it wants to say tonight. Thank you so much for having me. wrapped around your knees, 'cause I still cry. The tears of the fallen, the faults of us all, especially you and I. And all that can be if instead of choosing fear, we chose to be free. All the little pieces of my broken heart, they come back to me. I said, all the little pieces of my broken heart, they come back to me. I said, all the little pieces of my broken heart, they come back to me. I said, all the little pieces, all the little pieces, yeah. Hide away the parts you cannot hold for another day. But promise you'll be bold and burn down the lines between you and I before more years go by without you by my side. It's a terrible vice to delay paradise. I say all the little pieces of my broken heart, come back to me. I say all the little pieces of my broken heart, come back to me. I said all the little pieces of my broken heart, come back to me. I said all the little pieces, all the little pieces, yeah. So all the little pieces, all the little pieces, yeah. Thank you so much, family.
Oh my God, Elijah, it's so gorgeous. I didn't know you played piano and you played so much in my style. Or maybe I play in your style, but that's just so beautiful, man.
I think we're both tuning in to the same stream there, brother.
That is even your harmonies, your voicings. I just didn't know that we were so siblings in that way. That's just amazing.
I mean, are you surprised though? Come on.
No, well, I kind of a little bit because I didn't know you played piano, but that's just fantastic. Thank you, man.
Thank you.
Hey, let's
Thanks
let's
for
go to
having me.
Gallery View and give him some twinkles, everybody. Let's give some beautiful Global Peace Tribe love and appreciation to Elijah Ray.
Thank you so much.
Everybody tonight has just been so exquisite, and again, you can get all of his music at ElijahRayMusic.com. ElijahRayMusic.com.
Yeah, and I just want to say as well, just because my brother Henry just texted me to remind me, definitely go listen to the music on Spotify. I just dropped a new single a couple of weeks ago, and that song that you just heard now will be the next single coming out in probably about 2 weeks from now. So go follow me on Spotify as well, and stay in touch, everybody. Have a beautiful night.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you so much, Elijah Ray.
Yum.
Wow. What an evening. Thank you, Gary. Thank you, Elijah Ray. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Ken. Whew. And we have one more amazing guest. I'm so grateful to welcome back to Global Peace Tribe and on the Awakening World for the first time on Awakening World. This is Michael Tamura. And he is, well, as you can see just by his big, beautiful smile, what a bright light he is. And he's had a really fascinating life. He is truly living the miracle. He has been spiritually aware from childhood. He sees all of us, human beings, the way we truly are as immortal souls. And he's guided thousands of people to healing, awakening, and true purpose, drawing upon years of intensive training, past life recall, nightly out-of-body sojourns, and 49 years of teaching and giving clairvoyant counseling. And this includes returning from death 7 times. Michael is a favorite on many media outlets, and his wife, Raphael, who I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, Rafaela, is watching right now. She's in the Zoom room with us, and she's also a spiritual teacher and clairvoyant. They host their own weekly radio show called Living the Miracle on Voice America. So with no further ado, Michael, it's so wonderful to have you with us again. And how's your evening been so far?
Oh, it's been fantastic. And everyone who's spoken, from Gary and Ken and Omashar, you, Scott, Kim, and Elijah, just, it's been a wonderful thing for me too, to experience and see the healing that's going on in the whole room or community. It's in the virtual room that we're in here, and all the people who are tuning in and receiving such a depth of emotional healing. In the very beginning of the evening, there was a lot of pain, a lot of the pain of grief that we all tend to hold. And as the evening wore on and each person gave their presentation, spoke their words of wisdom, but especially with the compassion with which each person gave of themselves, there's an enormous depth of healing that's been going on, and it's getting lighter and brighter in this whole space. And at first, when Scott first invited me to come and speak for this evening, and I looked at the title, the theme of the evening was the art and power of the literacy of grief. And I thought, wow, that's a very fascinating title and topic, but I'm no expert in grief. I'm not a grief counselor. I never considered myself in that space at all. But then I looked at the word literacy of grief, and I thought, yeah, what literacy means the ability to read and write. And I thought, oh, yeah, I have a lot of experience in the literacy, the reading of grief in not only myself, but in everyone all around throughout my entire life. I've been reading. I'm clairvoyant, which just means that I'm always not only learning, but I'm seeking the truth and discerning what's the truth of the matter here beyond what it all just appears to be. In this world, basically, when you communicate about grief, most people's mind goes to some form of death and dying. And the grief is obviously the emotion that arises within us each when we experience a profound loss. And all that was covered by everybody who went before me. So there's this enormous loss, and it's probably grief. I would say grief, terror, and guilt are the three most challenging emotions for a human soul to not only experience, but to master, to become senior to not let it drag you down into the rabbit hole of nothingness and where you completely lose yourself. But amongst those three emotions, I think grief may be the hardest for many people, because when you go through a loss, you don't only experience losing the love of your life or losing something so important to your life, but initially, the reaction is one of complete being lost ourselves. We're lost walking around in shock of, we can't even speak. We don't have the words. We don't have the wherewithal to not even know where to begin. And just like I think it was Gary who said earlier on the show, where somebody mentioned that the worst thing that someone could say to someone in deep grief is, oh, get over it. It's like, okay. But I could also see where those people who say those things that seem incredibly cruel, and oftentimes they say it in a very cruel way, I see where they're coming from. They're terrified. They're terrified. If you notice, by no means am I condoning any kind of terrorist act or condoning any kind of cruelty or abuse or criminality of any sort. But if you really look in the eyes into the soul of a terrorist or a known abuser, you see nothing but terror first. What are they so terrified about? If you look beyond that terror in their eyes, you'll see the loneliness, the isolation, the grief of being so isolated from the whole of existence, from the whole of what we experience as life itself. And so the pain is so great. Just like several people said today, they cover over their heart, the core of the essence of who they are inside. They cover it over with all kinds of energy. And as you all know, everything is energy. Down to the subatomic particle is energy. We're energy. Our thoughts are energy. Our emotions are energy. So that's the starting point. It makes it a little bit easier when you realize, oh, this enormous grief I'm going through, this enormous sense of loss I'm going through is just energy like everything else. It's just a certain quality of energy that I don't know how to handle. I don't know where to even begin. And so then, where can we go from there? Well, I mentioned for many people, the biggest loss is some sort of death, even like the death of a long relationship, a death of your business, death of your home. You're out of a home, your house burnt down or whatever, where you've maybe the only home you've ever known, or you get evicted out of your country. There are many people experience that as grievous loss, tremendous loss that they don't know where to go, what to do. They don't even have a clue. Now, who am I? But just like everyone before me said tonight, we're here to learn, right? We're here to learn. As souls, we incarnate in these frail human bodies that like to age. And we start losing parts, losing hair, losing everything, losing our youth, losing our vitality on a physical level. But, okay, what is this teaching us? Because the only purpose we have here as souls is to experience this thing called life here in 3D and in time and space, and learn our lessons for our soul growth, for our spiritual enlightenment. The other part of the title for tonight, awakening. And the whole community here that Scott has is awakening, global awakening, right? And what are we awakening to? Oh, not only the truth, but we're awakening to who are we really? When I hear about the grief and the loss that people experience about death, I remember when I was a child. I've been taken to several funerals of relatives and friends of the family and so forth and so on. And as a kid, I'm clairvoyant. I'm seeing the spirit. I'm seeing the soul of the dearly departed in the church, in the place where the ceremony is going on, the funeral is going on, memorial service, whatever. And my recollection is every single time I'm sitting in the pew and looking at everybody, and most people are crying. A few people are enraged, angry. You know, you took this person away from me. A lot of people are blaming themselves. A lot of people are blaming others, depending on how that person died. But the person who died is shining like this bright, ecstatic, joyful light at the front of the church, usually, unless they're kind of making their rounds around through all the pews. And they're going, hey, everyone, it's time to party. It's just like when my mother passed away. She was the epitome of youth. When she was 63 years old and she wanted me to take her to the state fair at Sacramento. And one of the places she wanted to go to was the psychic's booth. And the woman there, young woman there says, you know, I'm very accurate. I could tell you your age to within 2 years. I've never been wrong. And my mother says, yeah, I want to do this one. And so she says, okay. And the woman looks at me and my mom standing next to each other. And she starts with me, and she nailed me, exact age I was at that time. And then she turns to my mother and looks at my mom, and she goes, 36. And I thought, oh, maybe she's a dyslexic psychic. She flipped my mother's age from 63 to 36. No, she was serious. She thought my mother was my younger sister. That's how youthful my mother always looked. To the day she passed on, she looked like that. In fact, she had her golf set shined up and everything for the next morning for a big tournament, all set to go play. But she passed away in the early part of the morning. I was in Los Angeles on a speaking tour and everything, and preparing to give a weekend seminar at this hotel. But every night, my phone, for 3 nights before she died, my phone would ring at 3 o'clock in the morning or 2:45, something like that. I'm deep asleep, wakes me up, I answer it, and some strange man's voice, no introduction, not even a hello, not even confirming, are you Michael Tamura? Can I talk to you? Whatever. No, it's just like, starts firing me with all these personal questions, expecting me to answer them. And I thought, sorry, mister, I don't know where you're calling from, but this is the middle of the night and I really need to get some sleep. And of course, when I'm sleeping, I'm teaching. So this is taking me away from my night class that I'm teaching in spirit. And so he wouldn't stop and he wouldn't let me talk or anything. So I just hung up and fortunately never called back. The next night, same thing happens. Different person, different voice, same pattern, no introduction, no nothing, just firing away questions. And then I hung up with that one. So by the third time that happened, I'm going, I need some sleep because I'm teaching a whole, weekend. And then I realized I'm in a hotel room. I could call the what would you call it? The operator. And, oh yeah, I heard about you could block your calls until you wake up in the morning and and then they could unblock it. So I asked the operator to do that. She says, perfectly, no problem. Well, that's when my mother dies. And my father in Sacramento, I'm in Los Angeles, he's trying to get a hold of me, but the operator wouldn't patch him through because my phone is blocked. And I thought, how interesting is that's when the one and only time I ever blocked my calls at a hotel room. And so, of course, my dad calls Raphael in Colorado, where we were living back then. And Raphael gives me the call and tells the operator, I'm his wife. This is an emergency, da-da-da-da. Please patch me through. And she did. Well, I'm in the middle of teaching in spirit, a whole class of people, but I'm being tugged back. And at first, I have no idea who's calling me back, who's tugging me back to earth. And so I tell the class I'm teaching, okay, I'll be back. I'm being called somewhere else. And so I come back through the ceiling of the hotel room to my bed. And there are my mother and her favorite niece, that they were like two peas in a pod, inseparable when they were together. Well, my what would be that be cousin? Yeah, she was one of my favorite cousins. Well, 36 years before that moment, she committed suicide because her lover got stuck in a police crossfire of trying to round up a bunch of communist sympathizers or something in Tokyo, and he got killed. She was devastated, and she killed herself shortly after that. And so I worked with her after her death, because that's when I found out. Her mother called me and said, I'm so sorry you weren't there in Japan at that time, because I don't think she would have killed herself if she had to talk to you. And I said, well, it's okay. Let's get on to the next step with this. And I worked with the soul of my cousin for a little while, and she was very fast. She's a very aware person. It was just in the heat of the moment, and she was completely lost. That shock state of grief and feeling completely lost, or her life was lost. So I worked with her in spirit, and then she just became herself again. And after that, she says, oh, one of the last things when we were working together, she said to me, when it's your mother's time to die, I will be there first in line to greet her and help her make the transition. And I said, oh, that'd be great. So it was no surprise at the time. When you're on the other side as spirit, there's no such thing as death. You never die. Your body does, but you don't experience that as death. You're not going away, so to speak. You're shedding your body. Like Kim mentioned earlier, of the metamorphosis, like the caterpillar turning into a butterfly. And she said, it would be a mess if there were no chrysalis, the cocoon, right? Because the caterpillar turns into goop inside the cocoon. Well, we're kind of like that. And so as spirit, we step out, usually long before the body takes the final breath. And the final breath that the body takes is the little tiny sliver of your life that you disconnect out of it. And then the heartbeat can't keep on going. The breath can't keep on going. Nothing, the brain doesn't work. The body's just a corpse. Guess what? Who is the life that animates each one of us? Is you, the spirit. In a lot of cultures, the word for spirit is synonymous or the same as breath. Isn't that interesting? So who's really breathing life into the body that you use for an incarnation? So anyway, my mother is joyful. My cousin's joyful. There's no consideration of death. So I don't know they died. that thought doesn't even enter your mind. It's just, I'm so glad to see them. But I'm saying I'm still being called somewhere. And I finally realize I'm being called back to my body. There's a phone ringing and it's Raphael on the other end. And she's sniffling and she's saying, I have bad news. And I'm thinking real quickly, okay, what's the worst news I can have at this point? And the only thing I can think of at that moment was, oh no, our dog got run over by a truck. And she says, your mother passed away. And I said, oh, she's right here. She was so joyful. The first thing she told me, my mom, as spirit, says, I am free. And so then only after Raphael told me that she passed away, that I realized, oh, that's why she's here. Okay? Because I see her, frequently out of the body anyway. But okay, I get it. And that's why my cousin is here. Oh yeah, she kept her promise. And so I said, well, both my mother and my cousin are here right at the foot of my bed. And Raphael, this is the bonus of being married to another clairvoyant. She goes, oh, good. Talk with them. And then after you're done with them, call me. And we'll make funeral arrangements and all of that. And that brought to my awareness, oh yeah, that saying, leave the dead to the dead. I'm tending to the living. And so the body that's expired, okay, I don't have a lot of time because, it has to keep refrigerated and everything, but I can go back to that in at least a few minutes. Okay. So I tend to my mother, and the first thing, of course, and I'm apologizing, I says, oh, I should have been there for you physically by your bedside. And she said, oh, no, I planned it this way because if you or your sister or Raphael or your dad or anybody was there, it would have made it incredibly difficult for me to leave at this time. She said, I was done. And she goes, maybe that was a little selfish of me. But I went the way that was easiest and the most freeing for myself. And I said, fantastic. As long as you got it the way you decided you would like to exit this world, that's what counts. We all make different decisions about it. So it got me thinking too of, oh yeah, all this, the grief that we go through is about loss, and then death is often associated with the worst kind of loss. And yet, to me, from the soul's perspective, birth is so much more difficult for the soul. So that essence life that you really are within this body, within your body, that's the essence around which, that's what we call the heart. That's what we call the core of one's life and beingness. And when we say we erect all these barriers around the heart to protect our sensitive, very feeling, sensitive heart, that's the heart that's broken. Just like Ken said earlier, it's like a paradox. Oh, you got to break the heart to heal the heart. Yeah. But what's the heart? That's you. That's the central core of your beingness. It's your life. Because as a being, as a spirit beingness, awareness, you are that being. You are that awareness. You're not separate from the awareness. All your awareness is you. And the most important part, you are the life. There's only one life. We're all living it, but each one of us, we're the life in this body. You are the life. You don't have a life that you lose. No, you are the life. You can't lose yourself. But that intense, painful experience we go through, we all go through this. When we do experience something we experience as a grievous loss, we get lost because we realize we don't really know ourselves. We don't really get to know ourselves until we start to learn to die correctly. And dying has a lot to do, not only with forgiveness, but with letting go of what's not true, letting go of how you viewed life through the lens, whether it's the rose-colored lens or a black-colored lens or whatever colored lens. To protect our sensitivities, we put filters around us so we don't want to see what we are afraid it might be. We don't want to see that. If we really see the truth about myself, am I going to find out that I'm just a real bad person? I was, a defect right from the creator. Right? Everybody else seems to be better than me. And so we're afraid to face ourselves. But as souls, when we're being born, that's when we experience our loss. That's why when we experience anything in this life, in this divided world of time and space, we come from a place that's undivided at all. It's limitless. It's absolute joy. It's a celebration of life itself. And from that amazing, beyond amazing experience, and that's all we know, then one day, choom, we slide into home base, into the body, and we're ejected out of, the mother's womb into this hard, cruel world. Right from the beginning, it's a shock. And what do we experience as souls? Right from the beginning, at birth, there's always an experience of humongous loss. But we don't really start to tap into that experience until much, much later on in life, until we start to, depending on when you start having really traumatic, painful experiences. And what is it that we lose in all of this is we lose our certainty in ourselves, and we start to protect ourselves, not from, we think we're protecting ourselves from the pain and the fear, but we're protecting ourselves from the joy of life. So the experience and the lesson from loss is to restore ourselves, our awareness, and our life force back to that celebration of life. And the only way we can do that is through compassion, through not just receiving kindness, but to offer it. Okay. I think it's time up.
I love that you brought it into compassion, Michael, because that is what all the great teachers teach us, is compassion. And I remember Ram Dass, who I had the good fortune to get to know very, very well. One of his teachings was that the truth of life is I am loving awareness. Who am I? I am loving awareness. And I thought of Ram Dass quite a bit as you were talking just now, and that way of seeing it. And it's, first of all, it's so beautiful to have you on our show tonight to kind of give your unique perspective. And it is unique because of your unique abilities and gifts. And I just appreciate how you remind us to enjoy life to the fullest and to have absolute maximum compassion. I'm seeing right here, Ayada writes, I'm so loving what Michael is sharing here. It's reassuring to get a clear picture of what happens on the other side. Donna writes, thank you, Michael. What a wonderful vision of those who have passed. It is so very comforting. Dia Therese, Scott, maximum gratitude for having Michael on the show, and every one of the others. This has been such a Thanksgiving gift. So Please stick around for the Q&A, and I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Gary, who's going to play a little music.
What a feast of beauty and wisdom and presence and wisdom and said wisdom. Did I say wisdom? I was going to share a wisdom film, An Island of Inner Peace, that I'm very excited about. I have a new series at Islands of Inner Peace for Gaia TV. And Ken, I was going to play Lynn Twist talking about courage. Courage is the heart of who we are. But it was too long, and I didn't want to delay us to the Q&A, but I did want to create an opportunity to kind of use music to tie this up. Michael, what a joy and a pleasure to hear you speak. I mean, I'm so touched by who you are and this ebullience, this effusive, beautiful energy that can only come from somebody who's actually been to the other side a few times. And I just really felt that transmission of knowing from your direct experience. And thank you so much for that, really. So I'm just going to do a shorter version of a song that I sang the last time I was on the Awakening World, because I love singing it. And every time I sing it, I kind of feel like I'm getting more into the way it's supposed to be sung. And I imagined it when I was during COVID, like it was Tom Waits in a funky, with a string bass and a really out of tune piano and this scratchy voice. And I can't do Tom Waits, but this is my version of it. And I really want to welcome you all to sing along the chorus, because it's very heart opening. And I'm going to sing the chorus first so it'll feel familiar when it comes. It goes, we are all here. We are all here. We are all here to love. We are born here. We will fall here. We're all here to love. It's a pity that we have forgotten. My heart is broken. There's so much at stake. But it's time now. Time to remember we're all together. Someone's groaning on the bottom of the track. I'm not sure. It's this. We're all together, sharing the ache. An old man is dying. He has no insurance. The kids have gone now to live their own lives. His nights are lonely, but he's still a father. Will someone reach out so he's not alone? We are all here. We are all here. We are all here to love. We were born here. We will fall here. We're all here to love. We were all here. We are all here. We are all here to love. We were born here. We will fall here. We're all here to love. We're all here to love. We're all here to love. Let's begin the round table. I love
Gary,
sharing that song.
Gary, before we do that, I want to go to gallery view and have a just twinkle you because that was so beautiful.
Mm.
That was, I love that song
Mm.
and I love you and your delivery of that song and those words is just as powerful as everybody else. Everybody today has just been so exquisite.
Scott, thank you. And I just want to say one thing. I remember the Cuban Missile Crisis when I was like, I don't know, I was 63, 10 years old. And somewhere after that time, my parents were crazy enough to let me watch this um, on the beach about the end of the world, right? And you remember that song, Waltzing Matilda? It was the theme of On the Beach. And I remember being so terrified that there was an end of the world, like that it was even possible at 10 years old. And then I realized during COVID, that's what that song reminded me of. And I had no idea until a few weeks ago. And God, that's like me comforting myself with the memory of the fear of On the Beach and Waltzing Matilda. So thank you for letting me share it again. I look forward to. There are three other verses, but I didn't sing them tonight.
Okay. Well, I am so grateful that all of our presenters have stayed with us. And so, welcome back, Ken and Kim and Michael. I've got you all on. And I'm going to pull a few questions that have come up. There was a question that came in quite a while ago from Ruth watching on Facebook, and probably for Ken. Her question was, what is a specific practice I know that I need to cry, but I haven't been able to? Is there a practice that you can suggest for how to open that dam?
Yeah. Well, just your asking that question is so heart opening. That's you with your hand on your heart saying, I want to give myself permission and whatever tools, whatever heart opening access I can give myself. So that's the most beautiful start right there. And I think it's not any one thing. And it's not something that we necessarily figure out all at once or learn from an expert. It's really a process of exploring if I could name 5 things that I do right now, or listening to music, walking in nature, listening to poetry, to Mary Oliver or to Kim or somebody. If I could name 5 things that I do that are helping me open my heart, that are giving me the safety and permission to allow whatever wants to come forward in me, and just to continue to cultivate that open heart rather than looking for some quick instant tool. I think the last thing I'll say is that being in the presence of safe confidants, of trusted confidants, people in a judgment-free zone, much as what every one of the speakers tonight has talked about and is embodied in this evening, in a judgment-free zone, free of my own judgment, but really in the presence of other people who can tend me if I unravel, if that's what I need to do, if I need to wail, if I need to yell, if I need to be silent. They can hold the space with me, and to be in the presence of others who have found that it's okay in their own lives, and who can help me make it safe and learn how to make it safe.
Beautiful. Thank you, Ken.
Beautiful.
I'll actually share a brief story about that that's very relevant. My father was my best friend. We were very, very close. And he died at a very early age. I was 22, he was 61. And, it was shocking. And I was the one there as he died. I walked him through it. And I didn't cry. And 3 years went by and I hadn't cried. Now, one of the things that Dad and I shared was we were big I grew up in Los Angeles, and we'd go to Dodger games a lot. We'd go to like 10, 12 games a year. But when I died, I just stopped going to Dodger Stadium. And about 3 years went by, and my best friend said, "Come on, buddy, let's go to the ball game." So I said, "Okay." We got in the car. Luckily, he was driving. The moment we pulled up Chavez Ravine and I saw Dodger Stadium, I lost it. I was crying so hard that my friend had to pull over, and I crawled into the back seat and I was in convulsions, weeping. 3 years later,
Mm.
it taught me that sometimes the tears have their own timing. You know, I hadn't planned it, I had thought of it, but when I saw Dodger Stadium, that was the match that lit what needed to come out. So may that may you find that match, and of course Ken's wonderful wisdom about being with safe people.
And
Ken,
by the way, Scott, you didn't lose it, you found it.
Indeed,
thank you.
indeed.
You,
Man, that's a good reframe.
you didn't have a breakdown, you had a breakthrough. And permission, especially for us guys, we learn that to feel is to fail. You get demoted on that male scale to a lesser of a man status if you weep. And to reprogram, to push the reset button and say, it takes the greatest courage for me to release, to give a voice to the sorrow in me, to give a voice to part of me that just loves my dad and wishes I could have had him forever, or that is searching for a way to have him forever. Much as Michael said, how much of grief would be lightened if we allowed ourselves to experience and exchange the love that never dies.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. Thank you. Yes. Here's a question from Dorina. Dorina's coming to us all the way from Ecuador. She wants to know, what would life be without grief? What would life be without grief? Kim, I saw you smile. Do you want to tackle that?
I smiled because I have never had that question or thought. I've never, ever thought about it. It's so interesting. I don't know that I have anything to say except that grief is, as Rilke says, I'm going to just quote the poet Rilke. In the end, those who died young have no more need of us. They are weaned of the earth's sorrows and joys as easily as a child is weaned from the soft breath of his mother. But we who do need such great mysteries, we for whom grief is so often the source of our soul's growth, could we live without them? Is the legend meaningless that tells how in the lament, blah, 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 we felt the first grief that now enraptures and holds and heals us? So I think I would say it might be missing a lot of art and music, a world without grief. That's all I have to say. You're muted, Scott.
That was beautiful. How amazing that you've got such a
Hundreds,
repertoire of great
hundreds.
poetry.
Well, maybe 150 or 200
Hundreds.
in various forms of dilapidation at this point in my aging brain. But I will go out quoting a poem when the rest of my brain is gone.
Oh,
But that great amazingness of that, that the crack lets the light in, right? So that the idea, everything that rises falls, everything that inhales exhales. So asking about a world without grief is like asking for a world that inhales that doesn't exhale. It's each moment is a practice in death and life. And I know Ken has something to say about that.
I just have a thought that my brokenness is one of the greatest parts of my wholeness. And my permission and safety to feel broken when I feel broken,
Mhm.
to feel empty when I feel empty, to feel lost, and all the elements of grief that make up, that compose grief, that are woven into our griefs. That I give myself that permission, and I realize that, much as in the poem, I think it's saying that our grief is perhaps for a time, perhaps forever, such an important element of our wholeness and our movement and our aspiration to wholeness. And for as long as it's there. And I think if we evolve, if somebody is there sitting in a moment of no grief, let's honor it. Let's explore it. Let's give it an inquiry. Let's give it the safety to say what it is and to have expression. So it's a great question, and it's kind of an opening of an inquiry. Or a poem.
um, there's a question from Michael, and this is coming from Jody on Facebook. She said, "How can I learn to see the spirits of my deceased loved ones?"
Well, the first thing is, this is one of the things that so many people who start from a place of thinking that they're not clairvoyant, they don't see spirit, they don't see the light, they don't see the truth. But that's the first thing you have to kind of let go of and realize, oh, you're seeing all the time. This is one of the things I noticed over decades of teaching people, that one of the biggest barriers to seeing is believing that you don't, and that you divide yourself from, even if you're interested in learning to see, okay, when I learn to see, I'll be able to see like you do, type of a thing. And what do you do when you put your seeing into the future? You're saying, okay, I have to do something. I have to be different than the way I am already in order to see. But the minute you do that, you separate your seeing on any level from who you are. But it's only you who is awareness. I think Scott quoted Ram Dass saying that you're loving awareness. Oh, that's you. You can't separate from that. And in fact, all the experience of loss that we go through in life is to teach us, oh, we didn't really lose what we thought we lost. And the most intense part of healing grief from grief is because we believe not only in the loss, but what is it that we really feel the loss or the separation from is that loving awareness of who we are. And when we have that, then the other part falls right into place, which is the joy of life. I guess someone was asking earlier about, what's the life like without grief? Is when you've learned you didn't really lose anything. You've had this all along. This is who you are all along. You're completely this unconditional love, which is the source of all life. You can't get rid of life. Yeah, you could try to ignore it, but you can't get rid of it. And so when you finally come to peace with life itself, that regardless of the conditions in this world, you are alive and you have to live. And this is what everybody's been saying too, in terms of, embracing the pain, embracing the grief. You have to let yourself experience it, not try to shut it away from you. The same goes with clairvoyance. You can't divide yourself away from your abilities. It's part of who you are. And once you do that, then you'll start to see things differently.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. I'm reminded of children that see imaginary play friends until too many parents say, "There's nobody there, honey. There's nobody there." And they stop seeing their imaginary friends that weren't really imaginary.
Yep.
So that reminded me of that, Michael. And Dorina is pointing out, would you believe that she always tells us what day it is? She has some calendar of days. Would you believe today is Good Grief Day?
You're kidding me.
That's what Dorina just sent us.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Good Grief Day. I
How could
love
we
that.
have planned that? That's pretty remarkable.
That is
You
pretty
know, and
amazing.
Scott, I want to ask your timing on this. I had this impulse that I could play a pad when we're ready to end and ask for Ken to do a little prayer, like a blessing, a wish, while I play a little pad underneath him as a way to kind of just close the conversation when we're ready for that, and that's pretty soon. So I just thought, Ken, whether you'd accept my invitation in doing that at some point if I put some music underneath you and you just, blessed us with a whatever comes forward to you. When we're ready for that, Scott, you tell me when
Yeah,
that
I
is.
think that's a great idea. I think that that's a wonderful idea. And I am not seeing any more questions. I'm seeing a lot of comments of people saying how wonderful tonight has been. Um, I'll read a couple more comments, and then if we don't have any questions, we'll go right into that, Gary.
Okay,
There's a
great.
lovely comment here from Ayada. She says, how powerful tonight to have men sharing so deeply and intimately about grief and strong, overwhelming emotions. I feel like I've hungered for this with men for a lifetime. Our culture has kept us segregated in so many ways. I'm feeling something deep and primordial in me, beginning to relax, to let down her guard. I'm blown away, beautifully so. Thank you all. So I'll bring the men that are up
Oh,
here.
Omashar has a closing song. That's
Omichar
fantastic.
does have a
Omashar.
closing song, but we do that after the Global Peace Tribe
Okay.
announcements.
Oh, okay. Great. All right. Well, so,
Maybe let's do the a few promotions. Just let
all right.
people
Yeah,
know
good.
how.
Good. Great.
Right. So we'll go to Ken first. And again, a reminder that you can learn all about Ken by going to his website, which is easy to learn. It's kendruck.com. Kendruck.com. And Ken, are there any particular places on your website here you want me to highlight or take people to?
Or an event coming up that you might want us to know about or anything.
Well, I love to share the CD and the books that I've written recently, and I also have a new one. I am with book. I'm glad to tell everybody. By the way, as you look at this book, you'll see my hand in the center, my daughter's hand on the left side, and one of my twin grandsons' hand on the right side.
Wow.
And the generations, the crossing of generations. But I think just giving folks access to my books, Courageous Aging and Raising an Aging Parent, and The Real Rules of Life, and Gary's and my CD, Healing Your Life After the Loss of a Loved One. That's perfectly fine. And I'm delighted to take questions from people or hear from people. I've already been in touch with a couple of people, Mark, and anybody that I can help in any way, I'm delighted to. I love the comment also that, it's so affirming and validating that we have found the safety and the brotherhood to be able to share as men, that we have opted out of the male scale measurement system that makes us more of a man or less of a man for the way we deal with our emotions, the way we open our hearts, the way we share with one another, the richness of the sharing, the generosity of you, Scott, the what you embody in facilitating and sharing and opening your living room, you and Gary, to all of us is a breakthrough in itself. And Michael, the safety that you have to create in a world surrounded by the thought police, who hold you as a suspect. Who is this guy talking about the afterlife? And But also, having people like Kim, who is bilingual and bicultural in male and female. So, I think we're all finding another level of and way of seeing one another and being with one another that transcends some of the old ways that we used to limit ourselves.
Oh, beautifully stated. Thank you very much, Ken. Well, speaking of Kim, I want to share a few things. This is her nonprofit organization that, Gary, you mentioned it, but I would love for you, Kim, to tell us about the Safe House Education Fund, please.
Well, really briefly, this was born by my reciting a poem. I was surrounded by girls in Narok, Kenya, who live in a safe house. They're Maasai girls who have run away from FGM, female genital mutilation, and early childhood marriage. I went because a dear friend of mine created the safe house, and I wanted to get outside my small world. And so I went to visit these girls, and I was so shy and frozen that all I could do was recite a poem. And that poem touched us all so deeply that there was a bond of forever made in that moment. And when those girls started to graduate from high school, they were no longer protected by the safe house, by law. And they had nowhere to go. And so I created a fund to send them to college. And now we're working with several safe houses, 3 or maybe 4 this year, safe houses, to send these courageous young women who run away at the age of 8, 9, 10, 11 from their tribe's practice of female genital mutilation and early childhood marriage. And they get educated, which no one does where they live, and they want to go to college and they want to become professional women. So that's what we're doing briefly, but go to the website and learn more about us if you're interested. The movies, I think, are the best way to learn about what we're doing.
What you have to understand is that there, in the world of nonprofits, there's so many layers that separate us from the actual beneficiaries. And in this one, you can see this on the movies on the website, you get so moved to tears at the fact that your money can make the difference between people going back to a community that might be a little hostile to these girls who made a decision to leave a very long, centuries old practice and then come back after college and reinvest their energies to help with whether it's nursing or psychology or whatever. They end up coming back to their communities. So you have a very direct understanding of the place that your money goes and the difference it makes. It's truly one of the best ways to create a way to sleep soundly at night if you give to this.
Well, and I will say, Gary's saying it in a very beautiful way and accurate, is that the center of the fund is relationship. You can probably tell that from me by the way I speak poems. It's about the one-to-one relationships, not just with the students, but in fostering relationships between the students and the funders, which we can all do now because of the technology that's available to us. So it's not, we don't foster lots of students. We have had about 50 students, and each one of them has deep relationships with the staff and the funders of the She Fund.
Wow. Well, thank you for that. And I saw where only $3,500 is all that's needed
Right.
to put all expenses for a girl to spend a year in college.
Yeah.
And that's all the expenses. That's amazing.
Amazing.
I also
Right?
want to direct people to your website because people have been asking. So this is where Kim Rosen lives online. There is the Feast of Losses that we, of course, heard about. This album is now out because we're now in November. And you can just go to kimrosen.net. Kimrosen.net.
And you heard it here. My dream on my bucket list is to be able to do an album with Kim one day with my improvisational style and her poems. So someday you're witnessing my desire
Yes.
online right now.
I'm willing. I'm excited about it. My desire too.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Kim, again, and would love for you to be back on the show. Knowing that you have hundreds of poems to share, we'll definitely do that.
I'll start
Um,
studying now.
I want to bring up Michael again for a moment. And Michael collaborates with his wonderful, wonderful wife. And again, to learn all about him, go to michaeltamura.com. That's his name, michaeltamura.com. And definitely register so you can get his latest book, You Are the Answer. Sign up for his newsletter. He's on Gaia TV.
Oh my
And
God. Wow.
tell us, Michael, a little bit about your the show that you do with your wife, Living the Miracle.
Yes, we've been doing the Living the Miracle with Michael and Raphael Tabora once a week, live broadcast on Wednesday mornings, 11 a.m. Pacific time, for now going on 5 years. And the every show, I don't remember how many we've done, 260 or whatever so far, is available to listen to anytime, 24/7, through our archives at the voiceamerica.com network empowerment channel. Or those of you who are much more listening to different platforms, it's on Spotify, Apple Music, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Stitcher, TuneIn, yeah, all of those, iHeartRadio. You can pick it up anywhere.
Fantastic. All right. Well, thank you again, Michael, for being with us. I really appreciate it. And last but certainly not least, my beloved collaborating partner, Gary Malkin. Gary, I'm going to go to tell us what you're doing on Gaia and Islands of Inner Peace.
Well, my version of how articulate Kim was around the magic of the way poetry and music holds us, I became fascinated with what happens when the authentic, tender, intimate, disarmed heart and soul gets expressed through the spoken word. And I started with, at the invitation of Michael and Doris Stillwater, when we co created Graceful Passages. And then the team I'd been working on way back in 2010 said, you know, people don't listen anymore without looking. And I was against the idea of having a visual version of this. Well, what I learned was you can use gorgeous images of nature through time lapse nature to kind of bring the your consciousness into states of awe through a biophilia response, a love of nature response, in a way that actually creates a more receptive way to absorb the alchemy between spoken word and music. So I actually surrendered to my teammates around allowing a visual medium to accompany the spoken word. And the difference between this spoken word and other spoken word is I use the art of film scoring to hand in glove relate to the emotion and the words that's being said. So instead of just, you know, like Mind Valley calm music in the background, I don't want to disparage that, but I really focus it on how can the music be approached like a film composer that elicits the emotional experience in the intention of the words. So for 7, 8 years, it's been on Gaia TV called Islands of Inner Peace. And we are launching this. We just launched the second season. I just found out tonight. I thought it was going to be launching in January, and they launched 2 weeks ago without me knowing it. And there are 13 new 8 to 12 minute films. And the people I featured are Michael Beckwith, Reverend Michael Beckwith, Lynn Twist, Marianne Williamson, Dr. Pankaj Naram, Sarah McCrum, Zalman Schachter, Louis Epstein. Beautiful, beautiful spoken word music and images. And they're designed for our culture that's very visually obsessed to create the benefits of a meditation practice. And the goal is ultimately to shed the training wheels so that you don't need this, so that you can meditate yourself without any visual or sonic stimuli. But it's a beautiful way to induct yourself into deep states of heart coherence and Islands of Inner Peace. And the link is, I think, in the chat. You just sign up for Gaia for $9 a month, I think. And honestly, Islands of Inner Peace, there's now 23 of my wisdom films. The second season is up now. So hope you guys turn about it. Or wisdomoftheworld.com. There are all kinds of gifts that I'll give you if you sign up for my website and my newsletter. I'd love you to join our community that honors the power of music to wake us up to human being rather than human doing identities.
So I'm right now showing Wisdom of the World, your main website. I am signing up again. I think I've done this every time you're on the show, but I always like to show people. And Gary is very generous with all that he gives. There's a lot here. And of course, all the amazing people that he's worked with. And these are all of our friends. These are all people that you've seen on The Awakening World. Lynn Twist will be on in 2 weeks. Michael Beckwith was on last night, and Marianne Williamson was on November 7th. These are all of our friends, and of course, they all love Gary, and Gary works with them. So definitely go to his main website as well. And I've put both of your links into the chat box.
And by the way, you can download Healing Your Life After a Loss of a Loved One on Wisdom of the World, as well as, I believe, Ken Druck's site. So if you want to have an access to some of the spoken word and music stuff that we did on that album, which was just an extraordinary transmission, you can sample it and experience it in both places.
Fantastic. I want to mention one last thing, just Global Peace Tribe related, and then we'll have you and Ken do that special thing, and then we've got Omashar closing us out. But I want to let everybody know that my Sacred Sunday show tomorrow morning is going to be really lovely. I've invited 2 women that I've known for many, many, many years. They're both dear friends. Joy Nordenstrom specializes in helping people find their right partner. She's a matchmaker, and she calls her the Joy of Love. That's her name, Joy. And she's a delight. You're going to love her. And then Shariah Dharma, and you've seen Shariah on the show before, but not for a while. And Shariah is going to talk all about the power of forgiveness. So from finding relationship to forgiving our divine relationships, they both are part of the rainbow of relationship life. That's going to be what we're going to be doing tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock Pacific time, 11 o'clock where I am, Mountain Time, and 1 o'clock Eastern. So do join the Sacred Sunday show tomorrow. All right, Gary, you and Ken are going to create something for us. Tell us about how's this going to work? What's going to happen?
Gary's going to start playing the piano. That's all.
And we'll be short and sweet because I really want to honor the what you
Just short
planned.
and sweet.
Yeah, good. Okay, so.
So we've gathered in this sacred space from across the planet. We've shared so deeply and so richly with one another. And as we wind down this time together, let's all take our own being into our arms. And with the hand of self-compassion, true self-compassion and kindness, patience, understanding, placing the hand of self-compassion on our own hearts, or holding our own hands, or wrapping ourselves in a warm hug, whatever feels right. Let's breathe in kindness, the voice of assurance, the voice of dearness that we use with ourselves. And let's breathe out the fear and the judgment and the admonishments and the criticisms, even our favorite ones. Breathe them out. Let them go. Send them into the universes. And with permission to return to this judgment-free zone over and over again, whenever we need a dose of self-compassion to ground us, to free us. Let's come back to this space, remembering all the dearness of what was shared tonight.
Love you, Ken.
Love you, Gary.
Thank you, brother.
Going to gallery view just for a moment, and again, let's give one more twinkle to Gary and to Ken, to Michael, to Elijah Ray, who was with us earlier tonight, to Kim for the incredible poetry, and just so many transmissions. What a beautiful, beautiful evening it's been. Really exquisite. And I am now going to turn over to beloved brother Omashar, who's always the first person when I'm starting the show, when we're doing our sound checks. He's always the first person to come in there and support in so many wonderful, wonderful ways. And Brother Omashar, what do you got for us tonight?
Wow. Well, goodness me, Ken, thank you so much. You gave me a great key tonight on grief, and especially as I still haven't grieved the loss of my father. Holy smoke! And that was like 12 years ago. And so I'm not looking for the magic pin to pop the bubble, but I have some great keys from tonight, and I've been taken so deep within. Thank you, Gary. And Michael and Kim and holy smoke and Elijah, of course. And so here's a little bit of a celebratory song. You know, it's everything's about us awakening together and holding hands whilst we're doing it. And it's so important for me to allow myself to be pulled into my depth and into my grief, because, you know, there's a lot of joy in the grief. And I have a few roads to travel yet, but hey, let's just get on with this song. And Eleanor, if you are there, turn your camera on and dance for us, please, sweetheart.
The awakening world is rising through our hearts, through our lives, as we take the next steps together, walking tall, no disguise. Here we go again, loving all we see, left each other out, let each other be, healing all the past, let each other be, healing you and me, loving all that's gone, loving wants to be. awakening world. The awakening world. The awakening world. Nothing left to say, nothing left to do. Let your spirit shine, let your spirit through. Time is what we have, time to think anew. Let inspiration flow, let inspiration through. The awakening world is rising through our hearts, through our lives, as we take the next steps together, walking tall, no disguise. Whoa. The awakening world. The awakening world. The awakening world. The awakening world.
Wow, what a wonderful new song.
It's beautiful.
Oh
Did
my
you
God.
recognize the title?
Perfect.
The awakening.
Beautiful.
Michelle, that was beautiful, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's always a trip playing a new song, as you know, publicly. The nerves kind of try to knock you off your seat, but you just stay focused, right?
You were wonderful, and it was fabulous. Was that
Thank you,
just a
Gary.
gorgeous gift? Thank you so much.
Thank you, brother.
Well, thank you, Gary. Thank you, Omashar. Thank you, everybody, for being with us. It's been a beautiful, beautiful show, Gary. You did a great job. And everybody who's been with us, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Hope to see you all tomorrow morning for the Sacred Sunday show. Next weekend, it's going to be all about travels. We've got Pato and Antoinette who are going to be sharing all of their experiences in Africa. They were in Africa for, making this documentary. That's Saturday night. Friday night, John and Summer are going to be sharing all about their trip around the country. So it's going to be a very special weekend next weekend, as always. You know, it seems like every show is so magical, and this one was certainly one of them. Much love, everybody. Get a good night's sleep, and we'll see you tomorrow morning for the Sacred Sunday show.
Namaste, everybody. Thank you so much, Scott. Love you, man.
Absolutely. Love you too, Gary. Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.